Hello and welcome to the HellfireCast, the official Hellfire Comms podcast in which we ramble on endlessly in a vain attempt to fool people into thinking that we're actually being witty. In today's edition, we're going to be discussing just how to do a playthrough.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach the whole thing. There's a lot of different styles that you can do when you're doing a playthrough, and all of them are valid, but we figured that we'd give some tips on how we usually do things, and I'm not saying we're, perfect at this stuff. This is all still very, this is still stuff we just do for fun, but we found some things over the years while we were doing it that can help you make a better playthrough right out of the gate.
Basically, we're going to start from the beginning and go all the way to when you hopefully will have a finished product. So, first things first, why do you want to do a playthrough? And this is important. Do you want to do it just to get noticed? Do you want to do it to have fun? Or do you want to do it because you have a certain message you want to put across?
What kind of message would you put for a video game playthrough? I really think that Metal Gear Rising is a deep and interesting experience. And I hope to communicate that with you today.
And I've punctuated this scene of Raiden destroying cyborgs with the word rebel, which just flashes every so often on screen.
It's a metaphor for the destruction in our lives, and why we all have swords, I guess. I don't know.
Basically, what I'm saying is that you should love what you do and not just do it to, jump on a bandwagon, because there's a certain genuine nature to certain LPers which makes them endearing. Like Sir Ron Lionheart, or whatever his name is. I don't watch him personally, but I know for a fact he's very enthusiastic and he loves doing playthroughs.
It's definitely true. I do agree that some enthusiasm is ideal. You shouldn't be doing this kind of shit for, the ad views or any other sort of popularity. Now, that can come with time, and I'm not saying that's bad. It's not bad to have, ads on stuff, or to ask people to like and favorite subscribe. I mean, I know I've joked about that before. Nothing's particularly wrong with that, but it's tempered a bit more when you're more authentic. When you have clear enthusiasm, you're not just playing shit just to get views and shit like that, all the more popular stuff. I mean, you can play popular stuff. The point is, you have to like what you're doing, I think, and you need to have a genuine passion for it. Otherwise, people just tend to kind of see through that, and in the long run, if you're really liking what you're doing, it makes all the low points, a lot more manageable.
And now that you've decided why you want to do this, you have to pick up, just the basic equipment and whatnot. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time discussing how to basically set up a playthrough here.
Yeah, this is like Tom's section. I don't record or use a TV. I kind of get all my TV through an abacus.
Which is funny because this is basically how you and I met each other.
What, we met through our abacuses?
Yes, through the boundaries of time and space.
Yeah, I set up a PM on my abacus.
Okay, red beat up, blue down, green. What does this even mean?
It's like Simon Says. I don't get it.
No, when I helped you set up the Dragon Ball Advance Adventure playthrough.
That's true. Tom did help me a lot with that. And though I'm not as proficient with the whole recording shit as Tom is these days, I did get my start from him, and knowing these things helped make a better playthrough, which I did bring on to other video projects I've done down the line whenever those get updated. So that has helped.
The basics of doing a playthrough. One, you will need a capture card. It doesn't have to be a fancy HD one, something like a Dazzle. I don't know what model's going nowadays. Dazzle Platinum is what I used back in the day, in the ye old times of Hellfire Comms Classic. So yeah, something like that. Now, with certain capture cards, they have inputs that will allow you to split the signal from your console to both the television and the software on your PC. With stuff like the Dazzle, it unfortunately doesn't, at least as far as I know, so you will need a splitter box, and those are easy enough to find. I may even put an example or two in the video description. And once you've got that, you're pretty much good to go for the most part. Of course, and this is kind of like a more advanced thing, so don't worry about getting these starting off. You have to decide between either composite cables or component. Now, I don't really know the technical details of these, but basically composite, normal, component, higher quality. So if you have the option to go component, which is red, blue, and green inputs, I would definitely recommend that. And the newer consoles like the Wii, 360, PS3 all use these. So just go with what you can use. If your Dazzle doesn't accept component, and mine didn't, it only used composite, which is red, yellow, and white cables, then don't worry. down the line, you'll eventually earn enough to get, component cables and upgrade, as it were. And then what you'll need is obviously some basic editing software. Starting off, me, and pretty much like everyone else who gets into Let's Plays and so on, playthroughs, I used Windows Movie Maker. It's not fancy. It's not particularly technically advanced, but it will get the job done.
Now, I have a question. I haven't played with Windows Movie Maker to get this. Does Windows Movie Maker do overlays? Because one thing I do recommend if you want to do particular kinds of playthroughs, if you want to have the ability to lay text and images over the video, you want a movie editor that does overlays. It's like all I know about movie editors. Get the overlays! The overlays are the most important thing ever. But, yeah, does it do that?
I'm honestly not sure. It's been many a year since I used Windows Movie Maker. I use Sony Vegas nowadays.
I use Magic's Movie Editor. I don't recommend it. It's fucking terrible. Any other would probably be fine. I hear Sony Vegas is good, but other than that, I'm probably going to switch after a while. Don't use Magic's, trust me.
I've tinkered with many a piece of editing software in the past. I've used Windows Movie Maker. I've used Magic's, like Helldragon says. I've used stuff like... oh god, what was it? ULED Video Studio.
Yeah, I remember that.
I used that for quite a bit of Hellfire comms, actually, before switching to Vegas, and then everything just became so much more manageable. But basically what I'm saying here is, before you start, invest in some good equipment, because you will need it. And speaking of equipment, if you're planning to actually do commentary with your playthroughs, because it doesn't have to be all commentary, you can do, like, blank stuff. You can have, like, text commentary overlaid on the screen, like Helldragon said. But if you're gonna record, if you're gonna record commentary, I recommend you at least get a decent headset. Mine isn't the best. It doesn't have the best sound quality, but it gets the job done. And this cost me about £20. So I'm sure there's a cheap equivalent for you all out there. I would recommend, at least for playthroughs, a USB headset over, say, a stand mic. Mostly because, and this is just me speaking personally here, I've got the best sound quality out of them. But really, it's up to you.
Now, I do recommend, it really does depend on when you're going to do your commentary, depending on the kind of a microphone you want. Because some microphones, if you're trying to do commentary while you're playing the game, some microphones don't really allow that. And you'll usually run into this kind of problem when you're trying to record stuff on, like, PC and things like that, which is what I've usually dabbled with. You want a specific kind of microphone, and don't ask me, because I'm still trying to figure this out, but I believe it's not a USB, but it's one that plugs directly into, like, the audio card, something like that. I would really recommend, just as a general warning, if there's a lot of stuff here in this whole podcast that you feel you need more information on, there are a lot of great tutorials out there. I would heavily invest in, some Google Food Time, because that's usually the best way to learn about this kind of stuff. Just fill the holes in as you go. But you do want to be careful about what kind of microphone you use in certain situations. Now, if you're doing post-commentary, mostly any microphone works fine, in my experience, since you're going to be recording it separately and then just laying it on the editing track afterwards. So you want to watch out for that kind of thing.
And in any regard, be it post-commentary, live commentary, group commentary, if you want to record your audio, I would recommend using Audacity, which is a free audio recording program, and it's especially useful since you can get a add-on called the Lame MP3 Encoder, so you can output in MP3 format if you so desire. There's a way to record Skype calls, which we used to use, which is called the Pamela recording program, but I wouldn't recommend this because it does not give you access to individual audio files because everything's clumped together. We used to use this. Certain commentary groups use it nowadays, and it ends up sounding a bit like a clusterfuck, and you probably know which ones I'm on about. So if you're going to do group commentary, just make sure you each have a copy of Audacity running, and then afterwards you can just go in and you can edit the audio of each person's track effectively and efficiently. Okay, now, the equipment we've described here mostly covers console recording. If you're going to do stuff on PC, you've got a few options. You've either got screen recording via programs like Fraps, DxTory, stuff like that.
I've used Snagit before and things like that, and when you're using screen capture software like that, you want to double check and make sure your settings are accurate. Making sure, do test runs. Make sure you're getting all the audio. Make sure it's picking up your voice if you're doing it while you're playing the game. Make sure you're getting all of your footage in a good quality. You really have to play with the settings that are there. but it's really important to get that right the first time, so that as you keep doing it, you don't have to worry about constantly bringing it up to snuff.
And on the flip side of things, certain emulators actually have the ability to record internally. Like the Mega Drive emulator I use, Kega Fusion, has the ability to record an AVI file, which... Granted, you have to convert using a Labyrinth lossless codec afterwards, so it will actually go into Sony Vegas, but it works, it gives you great quality, and you don't have to faff about with, certain settings and whatnot in screen recording. But each method has its own, benefits and downsides, so just experiment until you find something that works for you.
I would recommend, if you do want to record something using an emulator, you want to make tests of that, because... As Tom said, some emulators give you good recording. Some of them don't really. You have to really check and see if the quality and sound of the final video file is what you're fine with. If not, you should probably look into other methods. It really does depend on... Now, I'm not saying you got to be like super fancy HD here, but at the same time... Don't upload something that people can't really make out. Go for a decent amount of quality at the very least. Anything after that is really just fluff, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be HD, and we'll get to this later, but it should at least be watchable. Now, we've discussed reasoning for doing a playthrough. We've discussed equipment. We could go on for ages about that, but, these are just the basics. So now we're going to discuss different types of commentary. Obviously you have the stuff that we do, which is a mix of informative and hopefully comedic.
Well, most of that is on me, isn't it? I'm pretty much the guy you have to turn to in case the jokes don't work. Oh, well... Looks like your jokes suck this time. You care to explain that?
But there's loads of different types. You can be strictly informative. You can be, comedic. You can be a mix of them. You can do spoken commentary. You can do text commentary. You can, again, do a mix of both. Really, it all depends on what your style is. And again, this is going back to being, genuine and whatnot. If you don't feel funny, don't try and be funny. I mean, I don't see myself as a funny person. Some people gratifyingly do, and I appreciate that, but I don't strictly see myself as funny. So whenever I say something that kind of comes off as kind of aloof and witty, usually it's just because I'm saying whatever comes to mind, not because I thought, hey, this is a great joke, this will work.
Yeah, one thing I do want to emphasize, whenever you're doing anything like this, for any kind of project really, I really think you should stick to what makes you comfortable. I mean, later on you can experiment, you can, try new things and try to, build up some skills in other areas. Like maybe you normally like to stick to the text commentary, and maybe once in a while you want to try, some spoken ones. But the important thing is that, especially if you're doing this for a hobby, it has to be fun, and you can't really make it difficult. And if you're trying to do stuff you're not really that comfortable with, you're probably not going to have fun with it. I mean, for me, at the beginning, when I was doing all this, I wasn't really too comfortable with how I sounded recorded. I mean, after a while, I got used to it, and I was willing to experiment with that and try to make it better. And sound quality is important when you're, trying to do spoken commentary and you sound completely awful like I do. But if you're not comfortable with it, and if you would rather stick to other forms of commentary, if you're going to do that at all, that's really fine. All it really matters at the end of the day is making it good. Good quality stuff. Then people won't really care that much about the format of it, in my experience.
Pretty much. And you can do many types of, once you've picked the type of genre you want to address, you can do many types of stuff. You can do live commentary, which is what I do over on the live stream, obviously it closes in the title. You can do post, which is what Helldragon and I do for the normal playthroughs. And again, there's loads of subgenres of that as well. It's kind of like a labyrinth of commentary, if you will.
Yeah, post we found has been really good, especially because when you're live, you can kind of feel a pressure to say certain things or maybe act funny in a certain way. When you have post, you have the ability to pick and choose your best take. So if you're starting out and you want to do the whole spoken commentary thing, I would recommend some post at first just to get a feel for how to react to footage. Don't pretend like you're playing the game as you do it, because people see right through that. Just, experiment with your style, how you're going to present things, and post gives you the opportunity to edit out certain takes and pick takes that are good and basically make a more polished product. Maybe later on you can try some more live stuff, but at the beginning you want to just do something safe to begin with to really get experience with it.
And if you're going to do post commentary but script what you say, when it comes to reading it, please make sure it's enthusiastic, and again, make sure it sounds genuine.
I want to interject here that stuff you write for a script will probably sound very different than how normal conversation turns out. So when you're writing a script, you need to adjust it for your own speech patterns to make it sound more like natural English speech. You can still keep the basic context, but stuff that you read is written very differently than stuff that you say, and you have to take that into account. Otherwise, when you're saying some written stuff, it'll sound very stiff, very lifeless. So I want you to go back in there, and I want you to readjust it for sounding more like natural, human speech.
Basically, the phrase, "this sounded better in my head than how it came out."
Yeah, that's like most of the shit I end up saying, isn't it?
We've discussed reasoning, we've discussed equipment, we've discussed different types of playthroughs. So now, hopefully, you've got all that in the bag, and you've created your playthrough, you've got your footage, you've recorded the commentary for it. Now it comes to editing, and in regards to editing, I prefer efficiency over flashiness. Stuff that gets the job done, but doesn't necessarily set the world on fire. Nothing, too flashy. Simple crossfades. If I make a mistake, I'll edit out the footage. Trim sound clips here and there to make it, listenable too. And basically stuff like that.
Well, you also have to take into account adjusting. Now's a good time to adjust audio, sound, and quality within the editing software. As for visual effects, sometimes that's fine. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad to be a little flashy. Like when I've done Space Quest 5, I've used that opportunity to make a lot of visual jokes, a lot of title-based jokes, and things like that. And that's not necessarily bad, but you have to consider. Well, A, if you're willing to take that time, and B, the quality of the material. It all really does come down to is material, no matter what style you're doing. If it sounds good, and if it's written well and performed well, that's usually fine enough. And the same goes for any sort of visual stuff you want to include. Don't be, obnoxious with it. But if you're going to do, visual effects or humor or things like that, you don't necessarily have to go all out. And this is a point I kind of want to bring up. A lot of people tend to think that what I tend to see a lot in these kind of video playthroughs or reviews or whatever, and reviews kind of do fall into this category, there's this real obsession with using stuff like green screen or costumes and things like that. And I admit this is kind of a personal bias, but I want to point out that even the simplest stuff, no matter what style you do, again, if it's written and performed really well, if your informative stuff is really informative, or if your comedy stuff is really worked out very well, you don't need a lot of stuff to make a very good video. That's what I'm saying. It's my personal policy, but I like to keep things simple to a degree and base it more on the strength of whatever material I'm presenting. And I think starting off at least, you should keep that in mind. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a bad video. If you put the time in, it'll turn out great, in my opinion.
So make sure your footage looks nice. If you need to crop it, say you record it comes out, there's black bars around it. Use a cropping tool to make it full screen. If it needs color correction, do that. Again, there's tutorials online to teach you how to do this.
You want to edit out particularly bad takes sometimes, especially if you're doing some things live. You don't necessarily have to do no damage speedruns like Tom does. I personally don't mind if you get hit a few times, but you do have to consider the audience in mind when you're editing. You have to consider what they're willing to watch, what they're willing to sit through, and sometimes cutting things to speed it up is good. I want you to use your best judgment in that regards, but try to see it from the audience's point of view if they really want to watch that.
Again, it doesn't have to be a no-hit run, doesn't have to be flawless, but again, be considerate of the audience. If you feel that the death you left in was particularly humorous, that you could, ring some decent commentary, bounce jokes off your co-commentators and whatnot, that's great. Personally, I feel it's a waste of time, my time, the audience's time, so I just remove that and you get a commentary that flows. We're not just constantly going, hey, you died, and so on. That wasn't true in the previous HellfireCast playthrough, some a few years ago, mind you, but I have learned to edit more efficiently as I go on.
He's learned to suck less, pretty much, in video games.
Pretty much. And I will admit my audio editing is actually quite terrible, and it's something I've always, kind of struggled with. It may be, just to do with my hearing getting worse as the years go on, but sometimes when I try to balance the audio, either the game audio will be too low, or the commentary file audio will be too high.
He has to work with me, so that's kind of a recurring problem.
Yeah, you and FTA are naturally loud, so balancing you two is abysmal. And it's ironic because in the Generations playthroughs, the audio files that Gareth gives me, that's FTA for those of you who don't know, is stupidly quiet. So I have to unnaturally louden him, and it comes off as a bit scratchy. But again, I do my best. It's not great, but as long as you put the effort in, people will recognize that and they will appreciate it.
Now, I want to bring up something else in terms of the whole effort thing, and this is kind of a side note for me. A lot of people feel that they have to be funny when they're doing these playthroughs, and again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But you have to... What I think a lot of people lack when they try to do something like this is they don't necessarily understand how comedy works. And there are a lot of other people out there who tell this better than I do. But I think that if you're really interested in being funny in your playthroughs or your videos or whatever, you need to understand how the joke works. You need to understand why some lines turn out to be funny and why some fail. And when you get a knowledge of that, and when you're able to write that and come off saying stuff like that more efficiently, then your overall quality of humor will improve. I really do think that while some people can be naturally funny, I'm not saying it's got to be the most super polished material in the world, but understanding how comedy is written and how it's performed is a huge help towards even the most off-the-cuff kind of stuff, in all seriousness. And I really do think that if you're interested in the kind of stuff, I want you to go looking for, some good tutorials on comedy writing, some good books. Like, I've got some of my favorites are the New Comedy Writing Step by Step, the Serious Guide to Joke Writing, the Comedy Bible, and some other workbooks that I found. All of them can give you a better understanding. And if you're really interested in the kind of stuff, it'll make your, your funny material work out so much better. And that's supremely important if you're trying to make, comedy stuff. Because bad comedy, people will rip the shit out of you for that. I've had it happen to me before. Could you believe that I have made a bad joke? I know it's weird. But I've had that shit happen to me before. And learning how to do it and learning how to create, a lot of better material will really help you out in the long run if you're thinking of stuff like that. So keep that in mind. It's not supremely important, but if you do want to make more consistent humor, I do recommend you learn basically the basics of joke writing and to see how you can apply that to your work.
And just before we move on to the final phases of doing a playthrough, just going back to, different styles, you can do playthroughs solo, you can do them with co-commentators. Personally, I prefer to do it with co-commentators, because solo, I'm just not confident in my abilities. There was a time when, I did it, I enjoyed it, but that time's passed, to be honest. So, do whatever makes you feel comfortable, really.
It helps when you have co-commentators, because if you have a good chemistry, you can bounce off each other and things like that. If you have a good clashing personality types, I like to think Tom and I, my partnership has worked off so well because we're basically the traditional comedy duo. He's the straight man, I'm the funny and out there guy. Well, at least I try to be funny. Well, the point is, I'm wacky. Am I sort of wacky? Maybe I'm like 50% wacky. But the point is, we have differing personalities, and that helps. We can bounce off each other. And you don't necessarily have to have those kind of personalities, but if you can bounce off each other, it'll be a lot easier to talk about what's going on screen and basically to help fill time in a more effective way. Because when you're solo and you're trying to come up with it all off the cuff, it can be a bit difficult in my experience.
Okay, and now that you've, got your reasoning, you've got your equipment, blah, 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 and you've created a finished product, the last thing to do is figuring out where you want to upload it. Is it going to be a personal thing? Are you just going to show it to your friends? Or are you going to put it on a video upload site, like YouTube, Blip, or, God forbid, Vimeo?
Well, yeah, I think you're pretty much required if you do, like, an LP or whatever, you got to put it on YouTube. That's kind of the home of the whole Let's Play things, and it's true that I'm not gonna lie, you do kind of tend to find a lot of questionable stuff on there at times, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad platform to put videos on. Blip is primarily a lot of people go to Blip because of the whole the ad revenue things like that. You don't necessarily have to be a partner to get that kind of income off of that. But again, you have to consider the earlier things. Are you doing it for the ads, or are you doing it just because you want to show things off, you just want to have fun, things like that. It really does depend, and YouTube does have certain features that make it valuable over Blip, like the ability to make videos private, the annotations at times, and things like that, and also the bigger video sizes available, whereas on Blip, you have to be like a partner to get some of the bigger stuff and things like that. It really does depend on what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm. And invariably, you will get criticism for your work. Some of it will be baseless, ad hominem attacks on you personally, or some of it will be valid. Like, I thought the comedic moments, were jarring with the content presented. I thought your audio wasn't balanced correctly. I thought the video quality was poor.
FTA is terrible, things like that.
These are things you should take to heart. Learn from them and create a better product. Block out the ones that are just going on attacks. Those are not, types of criticism you should be taking to heart.
Let me add on to that a little bit. When you get criticized, and it's going to happen, it is supremely important that you don't take it personally. Now, it may seem like a personal thing, and sometimes it is. Again, sometimes people are just making attacks for no particular good reason. But what I want you guys to do is, I don't want you to overreact. I don't want you to spout something off, because it's very easy to do that. But with text, you can at least pause and think it over. And secondly, I want you to try and extract any sort of valuable feedback you can, even from the comments that make a personal attack. Because sometimes it's there. And basically, when you're going off and you're trying to fight back at these people or at any form of criticism, you're just coming off as childish, in my opinion. If you're seriously interested in improving any sort of work you do, whether it be writing or making video or even, other stuff like drawing, stories, things like that, you have to gain that skill and the ability to understand and process criticism, because that's really the only way you're going to improve. You can't improve in a vacuum. I've found that out so many times in so many areas of my life, especially when it comes to stuff like comedy writing and things like that. You have to have that kind of feedback, and you have to have the maturity to be able to take that and process that and use it for your own ends. And if you just go off and you act unprofessional when it comes to that kind of stuff, you're really not getting anywhere. And honestly, it's kind of a shame to see that, because only when I see certain people take that kind of information and process it and become better, and then when I see people that don't do that, but could be so much better because they took that time to figure out what they're doing wrong and improve it, that's honestly the biggest shame of all, in my opinion. Because by that, when you're failed to do that, you miss out on being able to create something really good. So I want you guys to be totally professional whenever you get any sort of comments or whatever. I don't want you to be a smartass and things like that. Some of us have smartass days. I have smartass days. And that's fine. It happens. Sometimes you have a bad day. But on the most part, I want you to be able to take what kind of feedback you're getting and use that to improve and not be an asshole about it. Because if you do that, then I've just lost all interest in you personally as a creative.
Now, I won't say I'm perfect in this regard. I think I've come a long way from back in the day when I was just like snippy snap snap.
Just snippy snap snap. Girlfriend?
Z-snap your ass. But it's a learning process. And it goes with anything involved, in making videos online. Not just playthroughs, but videos online. Your equipment will most likely start out, pretty bare bones. Your software, your commentary skills. I was nowhere near as confident at ad-libbing back in the day. I may have seemed it, but I wasn't. If you'll notice, I'm very quiet. I was very quiet back then, subdued to... I'll be honest, to how obnoxious I am now, but that obnoxious nature kind of works sometimes. You just roll with it, and there you go. And I'm glad you brought up, learning from criticism, Helldragon, because as we draw to the end of this particular HellfireCast, I just want to give you a little preview as to what the next one will be. How not to do a playthrough, in which we will discuss And from my point of view, it will be spewing a little bit of vitriol here. The do's and do nots of how to create a successful playthrough. So please join us then, where hopefully I won't go over the top and rage like a madman.
Don't worry, I'll keep them professional. We're gonna maintain a degree of professionalism while we talk about this. Worry not.
Speak for yourself. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time for another installment of the HellfireCast. See you then.
See you later.